Imagine yourself in the ancient world, where the Nile and Euphrates rivers were not merely sources of life, but the very arteries of great civilizations. Towering on the horizon are the grandiose pyramids, their glistening blocks reflecting the sun's rays, as if the gods themselves had ordained the place for their construction. In Babylon, the sound of water flowing through astonishing tiered gardens can be heard. In Olympia, the statue of Zeus stands so majestically that it seems its smile animates time itself. This world was brimming with mysteries, aspirations, and an unbridled thirst to leave its mark on history. The seven wonders of the ancient world are not ordinary structures. They are the embodiment of ambition, genius, and faith in the immortality of the human spirit. They seem to declare, "Behold what we are capable of. We will not be forgotten. Never." This list, passed down to us from the depths of centuries, has become a symbol of indomitable human will, its ability to overcome the impossible. But how did the idea of collecting precisely 7 wonders originate? The roots of this list lie in antiquity, when philosophers, travelers, and scholars ruled the world, attempting to classify and comprehend everything around them. Herodotus, known as the father of history, and his followers were the first to characterize the great creations of that era. However, the definitive list was formed somewhat later, thanks to the works of Callimachus of Cyrene, a librarian at the Library of Alexandria. Why 7? In the ancient world, this number was revered as sacred, symbolizing completeness and perfection. These wonders arose in an era when civilizations reached unprecedented heights in architecture, engineering, and art. Egyptian pharaohs, rulers of Babylon, and Greek tyrants used their wealth to construct buildings that were meant to outlive the ages. But it is important to understand that they were not built merely for beauty. The pyramids were memorials, and the statue of Zeus was an embodiment of divine greatness, worshipped by millions. The world around them was utterly different from today. Imagine caravans crossing the boundless sands of deserts to deliver precious materials to construction sites, sailors conquering the turbulent waters of the Mediterranean. Each wonder of the world is not just stone and design. It is part of history that demonstrates how far humans can go, driven by a dream and a striving for immortal glory. The 7 wonders of the world are a bridge between the past and the present. They not only tell of the achievements of those times, but also remind us that dreams can transcend centuries. Now, let's take a journey through time and discover how each of these magnificent structures came into being, who created them, and why, and how they changed the world. Now, let's move to Egypt, the country where the story of the wonders of the world began. Among the sands and scorching sun of the desert stands a monumental structure that still amazes with its grandeur. The Great Pyramid, the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that has survived to this day. The pyramid was built around 2560 BC during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, Cheops. This structure, nearly 147 meters high, was the largest in the world for millennia. Today, it is slightly shorter due to the loss of the upper layers of facing, but it remains a symbol of the genius and ambitions of ancient Egyptian civilization. The process of its construction is a real mystery. It took approximately 2.3 million stone blocks to create the pyramid, with a total weight estimated at 6 million tons. Each block, depending on its size, weighed from 2.5 to 80 tons. How did the ancient Egyptians transport such massive stones? Scientists believe they used sledges sliding on wet sand to reduce friction. Recent discoveries suggest that the Egyptians built special channels and platforms to deliver the stone blocks directly to the construction site using boats on the Nile. Originally, the pyramid was covered with smooth white limestone slabs which brightly reflected sunlight, turning it into a dazzling beacon in the desert. This covering, alas, has almost completely disappeared, but it once made the pyramid truly unforgettable. The technology of building the pyramid still sparks debate. Some suggest that the blocks were lifted using straight ramps that lengthened as the pyramid was built. Others believe that spiral ramps or a complex system of levers were used. Regardless of the method, it was an engineering marvel that continues to inspire awe today. However, the pyramid was not just an engineering project. It had an important sacred meaning. Pharaoh Khufu considered himself a divine intermediary between earth and heaven, and the pyramid was his step to eternity. The central burial chamber, carved from granite, was located deep within the pyramid. It was guarded by complex systems of passages and massive stone plugs, which were intended to protect the burial from robbers. Egyptian workers who created this wonder received good nutrition and medical care, which provided them with the strength for hard work. Recent excavations have shown that many workers were skilled craftsmen, not slaves, as was long believed. When it comes to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Cheops, one cannot help but wonder, how could the ancient Egyptians, without modern technology, create such a grandiose structure? The answer lies in their amazing technical achievements, which were ahead of their time. First of all, the precision of the pyramid's layout is impressive. Its sides are oriented almost perfectly to the cardinal directions, and the base is aligned with a minimal height difference. To create a level foundation, the masters used a water leveling technique, which allowed them to achieve exceptional structural stability. Construction required precise calculation and organization. The Egyptians demonstrated skill in using ramps to lift blocks. One possible technology was spiral ramps, which allowed them to reduce the angle of inclination and distribute the effort. Ramps are inclined structures that ancient Egyptians used to lift heavy stone blocks to a height during the construction of the pyramid. Imagine a long, gentle hill along which you can pull a stone up. How did it work? Blocks of stone were placed on sledges. These sledges were pulled by workers across the surface of the ramp. To make the sledges slide easier, the sand beneath them was wetted with water. This reduced friction and made the work easier. As the pyramid became taller, the ramp was lengthened or a new one was made to continue lifting the blocks. The ramps could be different: straight, leading to one side of the pyramid, or spiral wrapping around it. A spiral ramp allowed stones to be lifted gradually without creating too steep a slope. When the block was at the required height, it was laid in the structure of the pyramid, and then they returned for the next one. This was an incredibly labor-intensive but effective system, especially considering that the Egyptians did not have modern cranes. Such engineering solutions helped to lift massive blocks to a height of over 140 meters. The work with granite deserves special admiration. These dense and heavy stones, delivered from quarries hundreds of kilometers away, were processed to ideal smoothness, with copper tools, sand, and water. This technology was incredibly laborious, but it allowed to achieve high-quality finishing of the internal premises of the pyramid. The ancient Egyptians also used a system of unloading chambers above the burial chamber to redistribute pressure from massive layers of stone blocks. This solution demonstrated their deep understanding of physics and building structures. The Great Pyramid of Cheops is not only striking in its size and engineering achievements, but also shrouded in many myths and mysteries that have fascinated humanity for millennia. These stories are not mere fabrications. They reflect our desire to solve the mysteries of the past and touch the greatness of ancient civilizations. One of the most popular myths is the hypothesis that the Pyramid of Cheops is not just a tomb, but a device with a special energy power. Some supporters of this theory believe that the pyramid could be used to generate energy, and its shape and orientation to the cardinal directions have special meaning. For example, the so-called golden ratio is found in its proportions, a mathematical harmony that is found in nature and architecture. These coincidences give rise to hypotheses that the ancient Egyptians may have possessed knowledge lost to us. Another mystery remains as to why there are no traditional paintings or bas-reliefs inside the pyramid, characteristic of most tombs. No images of gods, no scenes from the afterlife, no prayers dedicated to the pharaoh were found in its inner chambers. This lack of decorative elements raises many questions. Perhaps the pyramid had a special ritual purpose, or its interior decoration was not completed. There are also myths about the builders of the pyramid. One bold hypothesis suggests that it could have been built by representatives of an extraterrestrial civilization. Adherents of this idea point to the incredible accuracy of the joining of blocks, the mass of stones, and the complexity of their transportation. Of course, this theory is not supported by scientific facts, but it adds an aura of mysticism and intrigue to the pyramid. Recent discoveries fuel interest in the secrets of the pyramid. In the 19th century, the British engineer Howard Weiss discovered several unloading chambers above the burial chamber. These spaces were probably used to redistribute the weight of the stones to prevent collapse. However, modern technologies, such as muon scanning, have opened up new voids, one of which is a huge room located above the Great Gallery. Scientists are still arguing about its purpose. Was it another unloading chamber, a secret room, or something else? Legends surround the treasure of Cheops. In ancient times, it was believed that the pharaoh was buried with incredible wealth, including gold, precious stones, and rare artifacts. However, no treasure has ever been found. Perhaps robbers plundered the pyramid in antiquity, but there are those who believe that secret chambers hiding these treasures have yet to be found. The connection of the pyramid with astronomy is another of the great mysteries. Some researchers claim that the three great pyramids of Giza are arranged to correspond to the three stars of the Orion belt. This hypothesis is supported by research showing that the ancient Egyptians paid great attention to astronomy. In addition, the ventilation shafts inside the pyramid are oriented to coincide with the position of stars, such as Sirius and Alnitak, which enhances the feeling of its connection with the heavens. Many of the mysteries of the pyramid are related to the personality of Pharaoh Khufu. Historians still argue, was he a despotic tyrant who forced thousands of workers to build the pyramid, or a wise leader who inspired his subjects to create this grandiose monument? And finally, one of the most exciting legends says that the Great Pyramid holds the secrets of eternity. That texts or artifacts are hidden inside it that reveal the lost knowledge of ancient civilizations. The Pyramid of Cheops remains not only the greatest architectural achievement, but also a symbol of human aspiration to unravel the unknown. Each new discovery opens up more and more questions, making it an eternal mystery that continues to inspire researchers and dreamers. After the mysteries and engineering achievements of the Great Pyramid of Cheops, we move to a completely different world, a green oasis, which allegedly towered among the sands of ancient Babylon. The Hanging Gardens of Semiramis, the second of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, became a symbol of human dream of harmony between nature and architecture. but were they a reality? In the descriptions of ancient authors, the gardens appeared as a large-scale construction, cascades of terraces planted with flowers, trees, and shrubs, which formed the deceptive impression that they hang in air. According to legends, the gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II in the 6th century BC for his wife Amytis, who missed the green hills of her homeland, Media. These gardens were intended not only to decorate the palace, but also to symbolize the power of the king who subdued nature to his will. However, the first thing that gives rise to skepticism is the lack of mention of the gardens in the texts of the time of Nebuchadnezzar himself. Chronicles of that period, including cuneiform tablets, detail the construction of palaces, temples, and city walls of Babylon, but do not mention the wonderful gardens anywhere. The first descriptions of the gardens appeared only a few centuries later in the writings of ancient authors such as Strabo and Diodorus Siculus. They could be based on oral legends or erroneous interpretations of earlier records. Another question: how in the desert conditions would it be possible to create such a complex irrigation system? According to legends, water was delivered to the upper terraces using a mechanism resembling Archimedes' screw, a device that raised water to a great height. This system would have had to constantly supply water to huge terraces full of plants, which would require an incredible level of knowledge in hydraulics. However, no evidence of the existence of such a mechanism in Babylon has yet been found. There is another assumption that transfers the gardens from Babylon to Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Historians believe that the creator of the gardens could have been the Assyrian king Sennacherib, who was famous for his engineering achievements. In Nineveh, traces of a complex system of canals and aqueducts have indeed been found, which could be used for irrigation. These findings make the Nineveh version more plausible than the traditional legend of Babylon. No less mysterious is the question of the origin of the name of the gardens. Semiramis, after whom they are named, is a more mythical than historical figure. Her image embodies strength, beauty, and wisdom, but there is no real confirmation of her existence. Scientists believe that the name of Semiramis could have been attributed to the gardens later to associate them with the legendary queen. But let's learn a little about who that very Semiramis was. Her figure is shrouded in legends and mysteries, and she remains one of the most amazing women of antiquity. Semiramis, or Shamuramat, as she was called in Assyria, was a real historical figure. She was the wife of the Assyrian king Shamshi-Adad V, who ruled in the 9th century BC. After the death of her husband, she became regent under her son Adad-nirari III, temporarily taking over the management of one of the most powerful empires of that time. This fact already makes her exceptional for an era when women rarely played an active role in politics. However, her story is not limited to dry facts. Greek and Roman historians, such as Diodorus Siculus and Herodotus, transformed Semiramis into an almost legendary figure. In their descriptions, she appeared as a wise, powerful, and incredibly beautiful woman whose exploits were close to myth. Her name was associated with the founding of Babylon and the construction of its walls, temples, and palaces. Many believed that she was the inspiration or even the creator of the Hanging Gardens, which became one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Semiramis was also depicted as a skillful commander who expanded the borders of the empire. According to one legend, she even tried to conquer India, but encountering strong resistance, was forced to retreat. Other stories emphasize her wisdom and ability to find a way out of the most difficult situations, thanks to which she remained in power in a world where strong men ruled. Legends about her origin also give her mystery. According to one story, she was the daughter of the goddess Dercato, who abandoned her newborn daughter to the mercy of fate. The girl was found by a shepherd, and then she was noticed and taken as wife by the king. This mythical plot was probably added later to emphasize her divine origin and greatness. However, many of her exploits described in ancient texts are not supported by historical data. Historians believe that her real role was more modest. As a regent, she ruled the state during a period of instability and strengthened the power of her son. Nevertheless, her name has become a symbol of female power and leadership. Semiramis has become a collective image, incorporating the features of various influential women and rulers. She was and remains a legend, an embodiment of beauty, wisdom, and power. Although her achievements have been exaggerated, she inspires even today, remaining an example of how legend can surpass reality. What could the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis have looked like if they really existed? The descriptions of the gardens, preserved in the works of ancient authors, inspire researchers and artists to create their image. Although archaeological evidence is still insufficient, reconstructions based on ancient texts and engineering knowledge allow us to imagine what this green oasis could have been like. Imagine a massive, multi-tiered structure built of brick or stone. Each terrace, supported by sturdy columns and arches, served as a platform for a rich layer of soil where trees, shrubs, and flowers flourished. The plants were arranged in such a way that cascades of greenery descending from the upper terraces created the illusion of hanging gardens floating in the air. Terraces were connected by staircases or sloping pathways, allowing palace residents and guests to stroll among the lush vegetation. A central element of the garden was likely an intricate water supply system. Ancient texts describe a mechanism that brought water from the Euphrates River to the top of the structure. Perhaps it was an auger-like mechanism or a series of water lifts that raised the water to the upper terraces. The water then flowed down through cascades or small streams, irrigating the plants on each level. The sound of flowing water created an atmosphere of tranquility and filled the gardens with the sounds of nature. The gardens likely presented a stark contrast to the surrounding desert landscape. The vegetation could include exotic trees and flowers brought in from various regions such as Media, the homeland of Queen Amytis. Perhaps among the plants growing there were pomegranates, cypresses, date palms, jasmine, and roses, adding not only beauty but also a fragrance that filled the air. Asphalt and baked bricks, which were characteristic of Babylonian architecture, were used to provide strength to the structures. A layer of insulation made of stone and reeds soaked in resin may have prevented water leakage, which was especially important for maintaining the terraces in good condition. The gardens were certainly surrounded by palace walls, protecting them from the scorching sun and desert winds. In the evening, when the sun set on the horizon, the gardens could be bathed in the golden hues of sunset, making them even more majestic. The gardens may have contained fountains, statues, and benches for relaxation, turning the place into a true paradise for the ruling elite. Although all these details remain hypothetical, reconstructions allow us to see how magnificent and amazing this oasis of wonder could have been. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, if they really existed, were not only a symbol of engineering prowess, but also the embodiment of a dream of harmony between nature and human genius. After the grandeur and mysteries of the Hanging Gardens, we move to Greece, a land of philosophy, art, and profound reverence for its gods. In the very heart of this civilization, in sacred Olympia, stood one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the statue of Zeus, which became the personification of the power and strength of the supreme god of the Greek pantheon. Zeus was revered not only as the god of thunder and lightning, but also as the protector of order and justice. Olympia, where Zeus's main sacred site was located, became a symbol of the unity of the Greek polis. Here, not only were religious rites performed, but the Olympic Games were also held, which were conducted in his honor. The Games served not only as a sporting competition, but also as an embodiment of the harmony of body, mind, and spirit, ideals that were associated with Zeus. The statue of Zeus, created by the renowned sculptor Phidias around 435 BC, was not merely a crafted artifact. It became a symbol of the god's absolute power over the world. The statue stood approximately 12 meters tall, making it one of the largest sculptures of antiquity. Zeus was depicted seated on a throne, his imposing figure embodying majesty and power. In one hand, he held a statuette of Nike, the goddess of victory, symbolizing triumph, and in the other, a scepter with an eagle, which represented his dominion over the earth and sky. The throne itself was a true masterpiece, adorned with gold, ivory, and precious stones. On its surface, Phidias depicted scenes from Greek mythology, emphasizing Zeus's divine origin and his victories over chaos. This combination of exquisite materials and detailed carving made the statue incredibly impressive, especially in combination with the soft light that penetrated the temple. For the Greeks, the statue was not only an object of worship, but also an embodiment of the ideal. It symbolized the harmony between the human and the divine, showing how art can reflect the greatness of the gods. The majestic figure of Zeus inspired awe, reminding people of his omnipotence and justice. The temple in Olympia became a place of pilgrimage, where people from all over Greece flocked to see this masterpiece. The statue of Zeus inspired, reminded of the strength and unity of the Hellenes, as well as the significance of religion in their lives. For the ancient Greeks, it was not just an image of the god, but a symbol of their culture, faith, and pursuit of perfection. The creation of the statue of Zeus at Olympia became one of the most complex and ambitious projects of antiquity, demonstrating the incredible skill of ancient Greek sculptors. Phidias, a celebrated master of his time, applied unique artistic and engineering methods to create not just a statue, but an image that would inspire, reverence, and remind people of the divine power of Zeus. The foundation of the sculpture was a wooden frame which served as a skeleton for attaching other materials. Special inserts and joints, treated with moisture-resistant compounds, were used to strengthen the structure. The frame was hidden under layers of gold and ivory, creating the visible surface of the statue. Ivory was used to depict the body of Zeus, and it was carefully polished to give it the smoothness and radiance of human skin. The thinnest sheets of gold were used to add brightness and luster to Zeus's clothing. This material symbolized divine radiance, and every detail of his armor, sandals, and cloak was adorned with tiny ornaments that enhanced the sense of wealth and power. The throne of Zeus was decorated with scenes from mythology, including scenes of the battle of gods and titans, emphasizing Zeus's victorious nature. The throne of Zeus was not just a pedestal, but an independent work of art. It was inlaid with gold, ivory, and precious stones. On the backrest and armrests of the throne, Phidias created carved images of mythological characters, gods and heroes, as well as symbols of power, the eagle and lightning, attributes of Zeus himself. Each carving was not merely decorative, but also told a story, connecting Zeus with his role as supreme god. Details of the statue emphasized its grandeur. The cloak falling from the shoulders looked realistic, and the statuette of Nike in the god's hand looked so delicate and elaborate that it was considered a separate work of art. The scepter that Zeus held in his other hand was adorned with emeralds and other precious stones. The light falling through the windows was carefully planned to illuminate the figure of Zeus in such a way that he looked radiant, as if alive. The effect was enhanced by the reflection of light from the golden and ivory surfaces, creating a mystical atmosphere. Phidias's studio in Olympia, where the statue was created, was equipped with the latest technology of the time. The best craftsmen worked here, engaged in the processing of metals, ivory, and wood. The remains of molds and tools found in this workshop testify to how laborious and precise the process of creating the statue was. The history of the statue of Zeus in Olympia ended sadly and remains a mystery that researchers are still trying to solve. This masterpiece of ancient art, created to praise the supreme god of the ancient Greeks, went through centuries of reverence but eventually disappeared, leaving behind only memories and legends. For several centuries, the statue of Zeus adorned the temple in Olympia, attracting pilgrims from all over Greece and other regions of the Mediterranean. It was not only a religious object, but also a symbol of cultural greatness. However, with the decline of the Olympic Games and the ban on pagan rites in 394 AD by decree of Emperor Theodosius I, the Temple of Zeus lost its significance. Over time, its structures began to collapse, leaving the statue without proper protection. The fate of the statue itself is still a matter of debate. One version states that in the 5th century AD, the statue was moved to Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. There it was supposedly installed in the palace to continue to inspire people with its beauty and grandeur. However, in 475, a major fire occurred in Constantinople, which destroyed many buildings and valuables, including, probably, the statue of Zeus. This fire is considered one of the possible causes of its disappearance. Other researchers suggest that the statue may have remained in Olympia and been destroyed as a result of natural disasters. Earthquakes, which repeatedly occurred in this region, destroyed the Temple of Zeus and its surrounding buildings. If the statue really remained in its original place, it could have been damaged or destroyed under the rubble of the temple. There is also a version that the statue was destroyed by Christian fanatics who in late antiquity sought to eliminate the attributes of pagan religion. The gold and ivory used in its creation could have been dismantled and reused, which could also have contributed to its disappearance. Archaeological finds in Phidias's workshop, where the statue was created, allow us to reconstruct some details of its appearance and manufacturing technology. However, no physical fragments of the statue itself have ever been found, making it one of the greatest losses of cultural heritage. Today, we can only see the ruins of the Temple of Zeus in Olympia, which was once home to this majestic sculpture. Nevertheless, its memory continues to live on thanks to ancient texts, descriptions of ancient travelers, and reconstructions by modern artists. The disappearance of the statue became a symbol of how even the greatest creations of art can be lost to time, leaving behind only memories and inspiration for future generations. After the grandeur of the statue of Zeus in Olympia and the wisdom of the supreme god, we move to Asia Minor, to ancient Ephesus, to learn about another wonder of the world, the Temple of Artemis. This grandiose temple, dedicated to the goddess of nature, hunting, and fertility, was not just a religious object. It became an embodiment of artistic and engineering skill, as well as a center of cultural and economic life in the ancient world. The Temple of Artemis was considered a wonder of the world, primarily due to its size and grandeur. Built in the 6th century BC, it became the largest temple of its time, significantly surpassing in size even the famous Parthenon in Athens. It was a building of incredible dimensions. The length of the temple exceeded 115 meters, the width about 55 meters. The height of the columns reached 20 meters. In total, the temple was supported by 127 columns, arranged in several rows, which created the impression of a grandiose forest of marble. These columns not only served as support, but also symbolized the harmony between nature and human art. However, not only the size made the Temple of Artemis special, its role for the inhabitants of Ephesus and the entire Greek world was great. Artemis was one of the most revered goddesses of the Greek pantheon, personifying fertility, the protection of women, and harmony with nature. Ephesus was considered her sacred city, and the temple, a place where the goddess manifested her power and mercy. The inhabitants of the city believed that Artemis protected them from disasters and granted prosperity. The temple became a place of pilgrimage for people from all over Greece and other regions who came to bring gifts and pay homage to the goddess. The Temple of Artemis was not only a religious center, but also a cultural symbol. Its construction and maintenance demonstrated the wealth and power of Ephesus. Works of art, valuable gifts, and treasures were kept inside the temple. Life bustled around it. Merchants, artisans, and travelers flocked here, bringing their goods, ideas, and customs. The temple became a hub connecting various cultures and regions, strengthening Ephesus's role as an international center. The unique location of the temple also emphasized its significance. It was built on marshy land by the Cayster River near the sea. This place was chosen not by chance. It symbolized Artemis's connection with nature, her power over land and water. The swamp, as it was believed, protected the temple from destructive earthquakes, which confirmed the mythological significance of the goddess as a guardian. Thus, the uniqueness of this wonder of the world lay not only in its physical parameters, but also in its significance for the ancient people. This place embodied not only architectural and engineering skill, but also a deep faith in the goddess who personified hope, protection, and prosperity. People came here not only for rituals, but also to feel the touch of something great, divine, timeless. The Temple of Artemis in Ephesus was not only grandiose in its scale, but also striking in its beauty and elegance of architectural solutions. Its builders and sculptors used innovative methods and exquisite materials to create a temple that became a symbol of the perfection of ancient Greek architecture. The temple was dedicated to Artemis, one of the most revered goddesses of the Greek pantheon. She personified nature, hunting, fertility, and the protection of women. Artemis was the goddess to whom they turned for help in childbirth and the protection of young maidens, and her connection with nature was emphasized by the image of a huntress surrounded by wild animals. In Ephesus, she was especially revered as the goddess of fertility and patron of the city, linking her to the abundance and prosperity of the region. It was these aspects of her cult that were reflected in the architecture and decoration of the temple. The temple was built in the Ionic style, known for its elegance and proportions. Its massive columns, about 20 meters high, not only supported the roof, but also created a sense of lightness and harmony. In total, The temple had 127 columns, each of which was decorated with carved patterns depicting mythological scenes, ornaments, and symbols associated with the goddess Artemis. Some of the columns were so exquisitely decorated that they were considered works of art in themselves. The main part of the temple was built of marble, which gave it a radiance in the sun. Precious materials such as gold and ivory were used to create some of the details, which emphasized the wealth and grandeur of Ephesus. Carved panels decorating the walls and porticos depicted scenes from myths related to Artemis, hunting, and nature. These bas-reliefs not only decorated the temple, but also told stories that were familiar to every visitor. The central place in the temple was occupied by the statue of Artemis, which in itself was a masterpiece. It was made of gold and ivory, and its clothing was covered with images of animals and symbols of fertility, such as bees and deer. This emphasized the goddess's connection with nature and her role as the patron of all living things. The statue, according to descriptions, had a solemn and majestic appearance, causing awe in everyone who entered the temple. Another unique feature of the temple was its roof. It was covered with terracotta tiles and decorated with sculptural elements such as acroteria, figures located on the edges and top of the roof. These sculptures depicted mythological creatures and symbols associated with Artemis and added even more decorative wealth to the temple. Special attention was paid to the location of the temple. It was built so that it would organically integrate into the surrounding landscape. The temple stood on a massive marble base, which protected it from the moisture of the marshy soil. This base itself was decorated with carvings and served as a symbolic transition between the earthly world and the sacred territory dedicated to the goddess. The interior of the temple was no less impressive. The space inside was arranged to direct the visitor's gaze to the statue of Artemis. Light penetrated the temple through windows located high in the walls, creating an effect of mysterious radiance that seemed to emanate from the statue itself. The floor of the temple was paved with marble slabs, and some of its parts were inlaid with precious stones, which added even more luxury to the interior. This masterpiece of ancient architecture suffered from destruction many times, but each time it was restored, reflecting not only the skill of the builders, but also the deep devotion of the inhabitants of Ephesus to their goddess. The first significant destruction occurred in 356 BC, when the temple was burned down by Herostratus, a man who sought to immortalize his name in this way. The fire destroyed the wooden elements in the roof and also damaged the statue of Artemis. This act provoked great outrage among the inhabitants of Ephesus and the entire Greek world. Herostratus's name was cursed, and they tried to erase him from history by banning mentions of him. However, instead of leaving the place in ruins, the inhabitants of Ephesus decided to restore the temple with even greater luxury. Thanks to generous donations from all over Greece, as well as financial support from Alexander the Great, the temple was rebuilt, becoming even more majestic than before, with even more exquisite decorations and an improved design. This restoration became a sign of persistence and faith, proving that culture and religion can overcome even the most difficult trials. But tragedy did not bypass the temple in the future either. In the 3rd century AD, Ephesus was attacked by the Goths, who plundered the city and destroyed the temple. This event was a turning point in its history. The temple was never restored to its full scale. By this time, the influence of Christianity in the region was increasing, and the cult of Artemis began to gradually fade away. The remains of the temple were used as building material for new buildings, including Christian churches, including the famous Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. The final destruction occurred as a result of natural disasters. Earthquakes, which repeatedly shook the region, finally destroyed the remains of the temple. By the 6th century AD, the place where one of the greatest wonders of the world once stood had become abandoned ruins. Despite this, the memory of the Temple of Artemis continued to live on in ancient texts and legends. In the 19th century, archaeologists began excavations in Ephesus and discovered the remains of the foundation of the temple, as well as fragments of its columns and decorations. These finds allowed us to restore a general idea of its grandeur and significance. Today, the place where the temple stood attracts travelers from all over the world. The place where the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus once stood is now an archaeological zone near the modern city of Selçuk in Turkey. This is one of the most famous places in the ancient world. Although only ruins remain of the temple itself, modern visitors can see traces of the foundation, several restored columns, and fragments of marble blocks that are reminiscent of the once magnificent structure. Moving on from the grandeur of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, we move to the city of Halicarnassus, located on the coast of the Aegean Sea, modern Bodrum in Turkey. It was here that another wonder of the world was located, the majestic mausoleum, built in honor of King Mausolus and his wife Artemisia. This monument became not only a symbol of eternal love and devotion, but also an embodiment of the ambitions of rulers who sought to leave their mark on history. Mausolus ruled Korea, a region in Asia Minor, in the 4th century BC. His possessions were under the influence of the Persian Empire, but he was actually an independent ruler, skillfully maneuvering between the great powers of his time. Mausolus was an outstanding politician and strategist. He strengthened his power, expanded the borders of Korea, and turned Halicarnassus into a thriving cultural and economic center. One of his main achievements was the transfer of the capital of Caria to Halicarnassus, where he began grandiose construction, including fortifications, palaces, and of course, the mausoleum, which would later become legendary. However, Mausolus was known not only for his political activities, but also for his close relationship with his wife and sister Artemisia the Coup. In ancient times, such marriages among rulers were not uncommon, especially in regions under Persian influence. Their union was not only familial, but also political. Artemisia was not only a faithful companion of Mausolus, but also his equal in governing the state. She was distinguished by her intelligence, education, and desire to strengthen the greatness of Korea. Together, they created a cultural heritage that amazed contemporaries and descendants. After the death of Mausolus in 353 BC, Artemisia was devastated by the loss. To preserve the memory of him and express her love, she decided to build a grandiose mausoleum. This monument was to not only become a burial place, but also symbolize the greatness of Mausolus and Caria. Legends say that Artemisia grieved so deeply over the loss of her husband that she even drank Mausolus's ashes mixed with wine, so that she would always carry a part of him with her. Although this fact may be an exaggeration, it underscores the depth of her grief and devotion. For the construction of the mausoleum, Artemisia attracted the best masters and architects of her time, including Satyrus and Pythias, as well as the famous sculptors Scopas, Bryaxis, Leochares, and Timotheus. Each of them contributed to the creation of this wonder of the world. Artemisia not only financed the project, but also personally supervised every stage to ensure that the mausoleum would be worthy of immortalizing her husband. Okay, here's the translation. aiming for natural, native-sounding English while preserving the original meaning and tone. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus was more than just a tomb. It became a symbol of love, devotion, and ambition. Its construction laid the groundwork for future architectural marvels and secured Mausolus's place in history, while Artemisia earned her legacy as a woman capable of transforming her grief into a monumental work of art. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus served not only as the final resting place for King Mausolus and his wife Artemisia, but also stood as an extraordinary architectural masterpiece, celebrated for its unique design and elegance. Its design blended elements of Greek, Carian, and Persian architecture, symbolizing the multifaceted culture of Caria and its connection to various civilizations. The mausoleum stood about 45 meters, around 148 feet, tall, making it one of the tallest structures of its time. It rose upon a massive rectangular base of white marble. This base, a stepped platform, symbolized strength and majesty, forming a solid foundation for the entire structure. Above the base rose rows of columns in the Ionic style, encircling the tomb chamber. There were 36 columns in total, supporting the roof and lending the structure a sense of lightness and grace. Between the columns were decorative panels with bas-reliefs depicting mythological scenes and heroic deeds, emphasizing the idea of Mausolus's divine majesty. The pyramidal roof of the mausoleum drew particular attention. It consisted of 24 stepped layers converging towards the apex, crowned by a marble quadriga, a statue depicting a four-horse chariot. This marble figure symbolized the triumph and grandeur of Mausolus. The chariot, driven by Mausolus himself, and possibly Artemisia, was an expression of his power and immortality, as if he were embarking on an eternal journey. The sculptural adornment of the mausoleum deserves special admiration. 4 renowned sculptors, Scopas, Bryaxis, Leocares, and Timotheus, decorated different sides of the building with intricate carvings, creating scenes that reflected not only the lives of Mausolus and Artemisia, but also their cultural heritage. Among the most famous depictions were battles with Amazons, Amazonomachy, maritime scenes, and scenes featuring gods and heroes. Each side of the mausoleum featured a unique style, reflecting the skill and individuality of the artists. Inside the mausoleum, there were likely life-sized statues of Mausolus and Artemisia. These statues might have been placed at the apex or within the tomb chamber, emphasizing their roles as rulers worthy of reverence. The details of the sculptures, including the folds of drapery, facial expressions, and dynamic poses, showcased the outstanding artistry of the ancient Greeks. Although the mausoleum itself was destroyed long ago, parts of this magnificent structure have survived, allowing us to piece together a picture of its former glory. Thanks to these findings, archaeologists and historians can understand how the tomb was constructed and appreciate the skill of the ancient architects and sculptors. Among the most valuable surviving fragments are parts of the sculptural compositions. Discovered during excavations in the 19th century, they are now housed in the British Museum in London. These include relief panels depicting battles with Amazons, maritime scenes, and mythical creatures. These details not only demonstrate the artistic mastery of the era, but also reveal the cultural environment in which the mausoleum was created. The depictions of battles offer insight into the power and might of King Mausolus and his court, and also show how highly valued the themes of warfare and heroism were at the time. Fragments of columns and architectural details preserving traces of paint and carving are of particular importance. These elements confirm that the mausoleum combined several styles: Greek, Carian, and Persian. For example, surviving capitals of the Ionic order testify to the influence of classical Greek architecture. while some decorative motifs suggest Persian influence. This highlights Halicarnassus's position as a cultural crossroads where Eastern and Western traditions intersected. There is also evidence regarding the mausoleum's pyramidal roof. A part of the marble quadriga was discovered, believed by researchers to have been part of the rooftop structure. It vividly demonstrates the ambitious vision of creating a massive pyramid above the colonnade, topped with the chariot sculpture. Another source of information about the mausoleum comes from the written accounts of ancient authors like Vitruvius and Pliny the Elder, as well as later chroniclers and travelers. Their descriptions, supplemented by archaeological findings, allow us to reconstruct the overall appearance of the mausoleum and understand the role it played in the life of Halicarnassus. Taken together, the surviving fragments and descriptions form a comprehensive picture of the mausoleum as a masterpiece of art and engineering. They help us grasp the high level of skill possessed by ancient architects and sculptors, and understand the influence this tomb had on architectural development in the Mediterranean region. The mausoleum became not only a memorial to King Mausolus, but also compelling evidence of the cultural diversity and creative genius of the ancient world. Leaving the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, we journey to the sunny island of Rhodes, home to another of the 7 wonders of the world, the Colossus of Rhodes. This monument, honoring the sun god Helios, became a symbol of courage and strength, inspiring not only the island's inhabitants, but the entire ancient world. Rhodes, situated in the heart of the Aegean Sea, was renowned for its strategic location and naval power. In 305 to 304 BC, after a year-long siege by Demetrius Poliorcetes, one of the Diadochi, successors of Alexander the Great, and ruler of Cyprus, the Rhodians successfully defended their city, becoming a symbol of resilience and steadfastness. Demetrius, defeated, was forced to abandon his siege engines, which became spoils of war for the victors. The people of Rhodes decided to commemorate their triumph and honor Helios, whom they considered the city's patron deity. The spoils from the siege were sold, and the proceeds were used to fund the creation of a grandiose monument, the Colossus of Rhodes. This statue was intended not only to underscore the grandeur and independence of Rhodes, but also to serve as a message to the world about the island's strength and unity. The project was entrusted to the sculptor Charis of Lindos, a student of the renowned Lysippos. Legend holds that the construction of the Colossus took 12 years, approximately from 292 to 280 BC. The statue stood about 33 meters, around 108 feet, tall, making it one of the tallest statues of the ancient world. The Colossus depicted the sun god Helios in a proud stance. His face looked out towards the sea, and his head was adorned with a crown of sun rays, symbolizing his divine radiance. In one hand, Helios held a torch, guiding seafarers, while his visage inspired awe and confidence in the island's protection. There is a popular myth that the Colossus straddled the harbor entrance, with ships sailing between its legs. Although this version is likely artistic embellishment, it underscores the statue's grandeur and enhances its legendary status. In reality, the Colossus was most likely located on land near the harbor, positioned to be visible from afar as a symbol of protection and prosperity. The construction of the Colossus of Rhodes became a symbol of victory, not just because of its colossal size, but also due to the significant symbolic meaning invested in it by the people of Rhodes. This statue was more than just a monument to Helios. It embodied the unity, pride, and might of a city that had withstood a powerful enemy. The very process of erecting the Colossus became a manifestation of collective success. All levels of society participated in the project, from selling the spoils of war to working on its construction. The citizens weren't just erecting a statue. They were forging a symbol of their resilience and independence, meant to be recognized by themselves and the entire world. Every contribution to the construction strengthened the sense of community and mutual support among the inhabitants. It's important to note that the very idea of creating the Colossus as an offering to Helios embodied the Rhodians' belief in divine justice. They believed their victory was a gift from the gods and a sign of their favor. The statue became a visible reminder that even the mightiest adversaries could be overcome through determination and faith. Another crucial aspect was the Colossus's location. It was erected in a place where it would greet ships approaching Rhodes, impressing visitors and merchants alike. This was not only a demonstration of power, but also a statement asserting Rhodes's status as a center of strength and commerce in the Mediterranean. The statue literally gazed out over the sea, meeting travelers and conveying the message that Rhodes was an unconquerable city. Despite the Colossus of Rhodes becoming a symbol of triumph and power, its fate was tragic. This grand monument stood for only about 56 years before being destroyed by one of the most devastating earthquakes of antiquity. The tragedy occurred around 226 BC, when a powerful earthquake shook the island of Rhodes. The Colossus, towering about 33 meters high, could not withstand the strong seismic tremors and collapsed. According to ancient sources, the statue broke at the knees, and its massive fragments were scattered around the harbor area. Despite this, even in ruins, the Colossus continued to awe those who saw it. Pliny the Elder wrote that many travelers came to Rhodes just to see the remains of this gigantic statue. After the earthquake, the people of Rhodes consulted the oracle at Delphi to ask whether they should rebuild the Colossus. However, the oracle advised them to leave the statue in ruins, interpreting it as the will of the gods. The Rhodians obeyed the prophecy, and the remains of the Colossus lay where they fell for several centuries. The statue's fragments remained on the ground until the 7th century AD, around 654 AD, when Arab conquerors captured Rhodes. According to chronicles, the remains of the Colossus were dismantled and sold for scrap metal. Legend claims it took 900 camels to transport the debris. The loss of the Colossus of Rhodes became a symbol of the fragility of human creations against the forces of nature and time. Nevertheless, the cultural and symbolic legacy of the Colossus lived on. This monument became an embodiment of courage, resilience, and unity, inspiring not only ancient writers, but also subsequent generations. The Colossus of Rhodes became an archetype for colossal statues and served as inspiration for numerous sculptures, including the famous Statue of Liberty in New York. Following the Colossus of Rhodes, which stood as a symbol of strength and unity, we travel to Egypt, where the lighthouse of Alexandria rose on the island of Pharos. This wonder of the world not only showcased engineering prowess, but also possessed immense practical value, becoming one of the most crucial navigational structures of the ancient world. The lighthouse of Alexandria was built around the 3rd century BC during the reign of Ptolemy Secu Philadelphus, in the Golden Age of Alexandria, one of the largest commercial and cultural hubs of the Mediterranean. The city, founded by Alexander the Great, rapidly transformed into a major hub of international trade. Its harbor, protected by the island of Pharos, welcomed ships from all over the known world, but underwater rocks and shallows made the entrance hazardous. The need for a lighthouse was driven by the desire to ensure the safety of seafarers and solidify Alexandria's status as the principal seaport. The lighthouse became a symbol of technological progress and the ambitions of the Hellenistic era. Its height, according to various estimates, exceeded 100 meters, over 330 feet, making it one of the tallest man-made structures of its time. It was the first lighthouse of such scale, and its light was said to be visible from up to 50 kilometers, about 30 miles away. During the day, the lighthouse reflected sunlight using a polished metal mirror, while at night, a large fire burned at its summit, maintained by dedicated attendants. For sailors, the lighthouse was a guiding beacon, saving them from peril. Many ancient writers admired its function, describing how it helped ships safely reach the harbor, even in stormy weather. But the lighthouse held significance beyond just navigation. It reinforced Alexandria's role as a center of commerce, culture, and science. Its light seemed to declare to everyone approaching the city, "You have arrived at the center of the world." The lighthouse of Alexandria also symbolized the power and wealth of the Ptolemaic rulers. It was proof of their ability to combine engineering achievements with the ambition to lead the Hellenistic world. The lighthouse was not merely a navigational aid, but also an architectural marvel, attracting not only merchants to Alexandria, but also scholars, travelers, and artists who marveled at its grandeur. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was not just an engineering feat of its time, but a true masterpiece of architecture and technology that influenced construction development for centuries. Its design incorporated innovative solutions that allowed it not only to fulfill its primary function, but also to withstand the trials of time and nature. The lighthouse was built from large blocks of light-colored limestone, making it visible even from great distances. These blocks were bonded with molten lead, giving the structure strength and resilience against the earthquakes common to the region. This was an advanced solution for its time, possibly allowing the blocks some flexibility during tremors, thus preventing catastrophic failure. The lighthouse's structure was divided into 3 distinct tiers, each playing its part. The lowest section was a massive square base, ensuring the stability of the entire structure. The middle level took the form of an octagonal tower, which reduced wind resistance and helped distribute the load evenly. The top level, a cylindrical tower, was the lightest and culminated in the platform where the fire burned. This 3-tiered design not only gave the lighthouse aesthetic sophistication, but also ensured its stability over centuries. One of the most astonishing technological features was the mirror used to reflect sunlight during the day and the fire's light at night. A polished metal surface, likely bronze, allowed beams of light to be directed over great distances, significantly enhancing the lighthouse's visibility during the day. At night, keepers at the summit tended a large bonfire, whose light was also amplified by the mirror. This was one of the earliest examples of reflective technology being used in architecture. The lighthouse's longevity can be attributed not only to the quality of materials and thoughtful design, but also to its symbolic importance to the Ptolemies. The lighthouse was more than just a functional structure. It was a symbol of their power and mastery. Hence, its construction utilized the best technologies and resources available at the time. Nevertheless, even the sturdiest construction could not fully protect the lighthouse from the destructive forces of nature. The Lighthouse of Alexandria stood for several centuries, remaining not only a navigational landmark, but also a cultural icon. However, a series of powerful earthquakes, particularly in 956, 1303, and 1323 AD, inflicted irreparable damage. Gradually, the lighthouse fell into ruin, and its stones were repurposed to build the citadel of Qaitbay, which stands on the site to this day. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, towering on the island of Pharos, had an immense influence on the development of lighthouses as navigational aids. Its innovative design and scale set the standard for lighthouse construction in subsequent eras. It became not only the 7th wonder of the ancient world, but also a model for future engineering achievements. First and foremost, the Lighthouse of Alexandria established the concept of a lighthouse as a multifunctional structure. It was not merely a guide for seafarers, but also a symbol of power, strength, and cultural grandeur. This idea of combining practical utility with aesthetics and symbolism was reflected in lighthouses built following its example, even centuries later. Lighthouses didn't just light the way. They also became architectural landmarks, underscoring the status of port cities. The Lighthouse of Alexandria had a particular influence on technological aspects. Its multi-tiered structure, comprising a massive base, a middle section, and an upper tower housing the light source, became a classic model for many lighthouses built in the Middle Ages and the modern era. For instance, the three-tiered design provided stability against wind and earthquakes and facilitated fire maintenance. This became the prototype for many lighthouses constructed along the coasts of Europe and Asia. The technology of using a mirror to reflect light, employed in the Lighthouse of Alexandria, was revolutionary for its time. Although ancient mirrors likely paled in efficiency compared to modern ones, the very principle of directed light became foundational for the development of optics in navigation. Modern lighthouses use Fresnel lenses and complex optical systems, but their conceptual origins trace back to the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which first demonstrated how reflected light could significantly improve visibility for seafarers. The symbolic role of the lighthouse as a light in the darkness was also inherited from the pharaohs. For sailors, the lighthouse became not only a life-saving landmark, but also a symbol of hope, overcoming danger, and nearing home. Many modern lighthouses drew inspiration from the legend of the Alexandrian lighthouse, including famous structures like the Tower of Hercules in Spain, the oldest operating lighthouse in the world, of Roman origin, and the Statue of Liberty in New York, which also serves as a beacon and simultaneously symbolizes greatness and freedom. Let's talk about the fate of the seven wonders of the world. Why have most of them not survived? The answer is both simple and complex. A range of factors contributed to this, from natural catastrophes to human negligence. Just imagine, these magnificent structures were erected thousands of years ago in eras lacking the technology to protect buildings from destruction. Architects and builders reached heights of mastery using stone, wood, and marble. But even the sturdiest materials are subject to decay. Natural catastrophes played their part. For example, the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, which stood for several hundred years, was destroyed by earthquakes. The same forces wiped the Colossus of Rhodes from the face of the earth. Earthquakes spare not even the most solid structures, causing them to buckle under their own weight. Human impact also caused losses. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, which proudly towered over the Mediterranean, was partially damaged by earthquakes but ultimately dismantled by people who repurposed its stones to build a fortress. A similar fate befell other wonders. Some were destroyed in wars, some deteriorated and were scavenged for materials. Some were simply forgotten. But perhaps the most dramatic loss, though not technically one of the seven wonders, was the Library of Alexandria. It symbolizes the same pain of loss as the Colossus of Rhodes or the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, destroyed by an arsonist hoping to achieve infamy. The cultures that built these wonders eventually vanished or lost their influence. The Egyptian pyramids survived because they were incredibly massive and built using techniques arguably ahead of their time. The other wonders, more delicate, were vulnerable. They were built not necessarily for eternity, but to impress contemporaries, but they left their mark on history. We still remember them as symbols of human ambition, ingenuity, and the pursuit of beauty. The fate of the wonders reminds us that even the greatest achievements are transient, but their memory can live on forever if cherished and passed down. Reconstructions and modern analogues of the seven wonders of the world represent an attempt not only to honor the memory of ancient masterpieces, but also to draw inspiration from them for new creations. Although the originals are lost, except for the pyramids of Giza, their grandeur has become a source of inspiration for architects, artists, and engineers worldwide. Let's explore how humanity today seeks to revive their memory. There have been literal attempts to restore some wonders. For instance, in Turkey, archaeologists and architects are conducting work at the site of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. While the temple currently exists only as scattered columns and ruins, its reconstruction is not just a technical challenge, but also a cultural project aimed at restoring its former glory. Fully recreating the temple is unlikely, but modern technology allows for detailed 3D models that convey its elegance. Another example of an attempt to revive an ancient wonder is the Colossus of Rhodes. Several times throughout history, projects have been proposed to build a new giant statue symbolizing power and unity. Although none have been realized, the very idea demonstrates how potent the image of the Colossus remains. Modern engineers would propose a more earthquake-resistant design, but the spirit would remain the same, majestic and inspiring. The Lighthouse of Alexandria also finds its modern analogues. Some historians and architects dream of restoring it to its full scale, so it might once again become a symbol of maritime navigation and human ingenuity. In Egypt, there has even been discussion about creating a modern lighthouse based on the original design, but utilizing the latest technologies. Beyond direct restoration, we see the creation of new wonders of the world that pay homage to the ancient ones. For example, Dubai, with its architectural ambitions, echoes ancient civilizations that strove to achieve the impossible. The Burj Khalifa, a majestic tower, like a modern colossus, soars above the city, demonstrating the power of modern technology. The idea of the hanging gardens, a harmony of nature and art, has inspired projects like the vertical gardens in Singapore or the famous Bosco Verticale, vertical forest, in Milan. These modern gardens show how ancient dreams of paradise on earth find reflection even in our era. The fate of the seven wonders reminds us that human inspiration is enduring. We cannot bring back the past, but we can learn from it and create new masterpieces. Every reconstruction, model, or new project is not just a tribute to memory, but also a reminder that the human dream, like history itself, continues.